Dolphins at Daybreak by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 9. Ouch! The sun shone on the ocean. It sparkled like a diamond. Jack felt safe now. His dolphin was taking good care of him. The dolphin slowed down as they neared the reef. Jack lowered his feet. He felt the bumpy coral. He let go of the dolphin's fin and stood up in the water. Annie stood too. Then she threw her arm around her dolphin and gave her a big hug. "Thank you, Suki," she cried, and she kissed the dolphin's nose. Suki tossed her head and clicked at Annie. "Kiss Sam now," Annie said to Jack. "You're nuts," said Jack. But Sam nuzzled Jack's head. Then he put his flipper around Jack's neck. Jack couldn't resist. He threw his arms around the dolphin and gave him a quick kiss. Sam nodded and made clicking sounds like laughter. Then he turned to Suki. The two dolphins chattered to each other for a moment. They nodded at Jack and Annie and swam gracefully away. "Bye, Suki. Bye, Sam," Annie shouted. "Thanks," Jack shouted. The dolphins leapt high into the air. Then they dove back into the water with a splash. Jack and Annie laughed. "I wish we could swim like that," said Jack. Jack and Annie watched the dolphins until they disappeared. "I miss them already," Annie said softly. "Me too," said Jack. He sat down in the shallow water. "I'm really tired," he said. Annie sat beside him. "Me too," she said. The warm water lapped around their shorts and t-shirts. Jack pulled off his pack. He took out his glasses and put them on. They were blurry with water. "Guess what?" said Annie. "What?" said Jack. "I saw the shark when we were swimming," said Annie. "But I didn't tell you. I wanted you to stay calm." Jack stared at her. "I saw it too. I just swam faster so you would swim faster." "And I swam faster so you would swim faster," said Annie. "I guess we swam double fast then," Jack said. He shook his head with wonder. "What now?" said Annie. "We go home," said Jack. "But we haven't solved Morgan's riddle yet," said Annie. Jack sighed. He pulled his notebook out of his pack. It was soaked. He pulled out the ocean book. It was soaked too. "We've failed," he said. "My research is all wet. We'll never be master librarians now." Jack put everything away. "Let's go," he said sadly. He stood up. Then he started across the pink reef toward the treehouse. Annie followed him. "Ouch!" Annie said. "What's wrong?" Jack looked back. "I stepped on something," and he bent down to rub her foot. "What?" said Jack. "A shell?" "Yeah, this—" She picked up a large gray shell. "Boy, is it rough. Rough and gray as a rock." "And plain as plain can be," whispered Jack. They found the answer. The shell looked like a clam shell, only bigger with more ridges. "How could this ugly shell be the answer to the riddle?" said Annie. "What about the part that says, 'There's great beauty in me'?" "Wait. Research," said Jack. He opened the ocean book. The pages were stuck together, but he was able to turn a few. He found a picture of the gray shell. He read, "Divers search for oysters in deep water, but sometimes oysters wash up on reefs or beaches. Inside some oysters you can find a pearl. The pearl's natural beauty makes it a treasure." "It must have a pearl inside it," said Jack. Annie peered into the crack between the two halves of the shell. "I can't see anything," she said. "How does a pearl get in there anyway?" Jack read aloud from the wet page. "Sometimes a grain of sand will get between the oyster shell and its skin. This irritates the oyster, so it makes a pearly material to surround the grain of sand. In this way, over a few years, a pearl is formed." "I can't tell if there's a pearl in there or not," said Annie. "Maybe we should bang it against a rock," said Jack. "Now that would really irritate the oyster," said Annie. "Yeah." "Maybe we should just leave it alone," said Annie. She gently put the oyster back in the water. "But how will we know if oyster is the right answer to the riddle?" said Jack. Morgan said we'll know, said Annie. Come on. Jack pushed his glasses into place. Then he and Annie picked up their shoes and socks. They climbed through the window of the treehouse. Morgan's scroll was lying on the floor. It was open. Look, said Annie. She and Jack stared at the scroll. The riddle had faded away. In its place was one shimmering silver word, oyster. Morgan's magic, whispered Annie. Jack let out a huge sigh. We got it right, he said. And here's the Pennsylvania book, said Annie. Let's go home. She opened the book. She pointed to a picture of Frog Creek Woods. I wish we could go there, she said. The wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. The wind blew harder and harder. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 10. The True Pearl. Dawn light slanted into the treehouse. No time at all had passed since they left. Day was breaking. Jack rolled up the ancient scroll. He tucked it in the corner. We solved the first riddle, he said. 3 more to go. I don't see another scroll, said Annie. Maybe tomorrow we'll get the next riddle. That's okay, said Jack. I think I need to rest and dry out. His t-shirt and shorts were still soaked, his backpack too. Only his shoes and socks were dry. And this needs to dry out too, said Annie. She put the wet ocean book in a patch of sunlight. Then Jack and Annie climbed down the ladder. They walked through the woods through leafy shadows and golden light. They left the woods and started down their street. You know, we should have found the answer to the riddle right away, said Jack. The oyster was on the reef all along. I know, but we wouldn't have had so much fun, said Annie. Fun? Said Jack. You call being squeezed by an octopus and chased by a shark fun? Don't forget the dolphins, Annie said simply. Jack smiled. Right, he said. The dolphins made up for everything. They were fun. I guess they were the true pearl in the oyster, said Annie. Yep, said Jack. I wonder what Sam is doing right now. Sam? Annie grinned at him. You're nuts, she said. They climbed their steps and went into their house. We're back, Annie shouted. Did you get your shoes wet? Their mom called. Not one bit, called Jack. Then he and Annie slipped up the stairs to change their clothes.